Hello, Demons Fae and those in between. This is Dizzy, and I will be continuing the Phantom and the Clone series by Vet2270. This will be the 5th story in the series entitled Superman's Confrontation. Here's the summary. Phantom and Superman have a discussion on clones. Clark readjusts his glasses, looking around the fast food restaurant. He's skeptical to eat at a place called Nasty Burger, but if this conversation is anything like the one with Bruce, he doubts he'll be having anything anyway. Despite the growing discomfort for the upcoming talk, Clark still finds himself strangely excited to be in Amity Park for the first time. Phantom's warning of overshadowing has scared off a good amount of Curious League members from visiting, but the ghost hero assured him that it's unlikely for a regular reporter to be at any real risk of being controlled. He already has a cover story mentally prepared to explain why his civilian self would be meeting with Phantom, but when the hero enters the restaurant, no one actually pays him any mind. The ghost spots Clark right away and heads toward him with a beaming smile. "Hey there," he greets. "Thanks for agreeing to meet." "Hi," Clark responds, a bit bewildered by the ghost's upbeat tone. "You wanted to talk to me," he states, more than asks, hoping to just get this over with. "Yep," the hero chirps. "I'm gonna go order food first. Do you want anything?" He shakes his head no, and the ghost floats over to the register. Clark likes the ghost hero, and he hopes the good mood will last, but his argument with Bruce keeps replaying in his mind. He doesn't want to get into any more fights with his coworkers. Phantom slides in the booth bench across from him. The ghost leaguer is actually sitting, rather than his usual hover over a chair, and Clark can't help but notice how small the hero looks like this. His heart aches, not for the first time, at the thought of a kid dying so young. Contrary to his cheery greeting, Phantom is now uncharacteristically quiet, simply frowning at the table in thought and tapping his fingers. Clark would have been fine in keeping the silence if his colleague didn't keep opening his mouth to start talking and abruptly closing it. By the time Phantom's meal is brought to the table, the reporter makes the first move. "So," he begins uncertainly, "where's the, boys?" He trails off with a wince, trying his best to avoid the C word. The ghost's expression softens at the question, the nervous tension in his frame dissolving in relief. "They're safe, don't worry. Their aunt took them out to Paris, I think." He chuckles a bit. "I'm not completely sure, she kinda just took them and ran." "I see." Clark had heard rumors about Phantom having sisters, but it's strange to have that detail confirmed. Still, the fact that he doesn't even know where they went is a bit worrisome. "I think she's just excited to have someone to drag with her on her travels," Phantom continues with a small smile. "It's good for the kids to explore too, to see the world apart from missions and fighting." "Isn't that dangerous, though?" Clark asks. "Leaving them unsupervised like that?" Clark is no Batman when it comes to paranoia, but even he thinks Phantom is being too lax in acknowledging the security risk the clones pose. A confused expression forms on Phantom's face. "Their aunt is with them. Is she as strong as you?" Superman stresses. If she shares his power, then maybe Phantom did put some thought into their supervisor after all. Phantom begins eating his fries and shrugs. "I mean, physically, no. I'd probably win in terms of strength, but she can handle herself." Phantom answers with amusement dancing in his bright green eyes. "You don't have to worry about the danger soups. Between her and Connor, they can take on just about anything." Superman sighs at his coworker's lack of understanding. "Did something happen yesterday?" Phantom asks. "Connor was really upset when he got back from Metropolis, and I can't figure out what went wrong." "Connor? Is that the boy's name?" Clark shrugs, not able to find anything particularly upsetting that could have set off the clone. That sensitive temperament of his may be the cause for concern, though. Phantom, however, seems genuinely distressed for the clone, one that is not even his responsibility at that. "I don't get it," Superman confesses. "How are you so calm? Doesn't this whole situation bother you?" The Kryptonian has yet to completely relax since the clone's discovery, and he doesn't understand why the rest of the Leaguers are just brushing it aside. Bruce, in all his self-sacrificing glory, can't seem to understand why he can't just adopt the boy, to ignore the pain and frustration each time he sees the clone. Worst of all, the one person who would understand what he's going through right now is acting the least concerned of all. "Don't you feel violated?" he chokes out, "knowing that your DNA was stolen from you, used for who knows what?" He can feel his voice rising, and notes a couple of tables glancing their way, but Clark can't find it in himself to care at this moment. He wants to understand why he's the only one feeling this way. He hates that he wishes his friend to go through the same turmoil that he is feeling, but the fact that Phantom can find so much joy in the situation bothers him more. Phantom searches his face with piercing eyes, causing the Kryptonian to repress a shiver of unease. Thankfully, the gaze moves down to the fry between his gloved fingers. For a moment, Clark isn't sure Phantom is going to answer, just going to sit there twirling the fry until the conversation fades. But he does. "You know, the first time I was cloned, I was 14, Phantom says, in an impassive voice, shocking a noise of surprise out of Clark. Unbothered by the reporter's reaction, he continues. "My godfather has this delusion that if he couldn't have me as his perfect son, he could just make one himself." A small smirk twitches at the end of Phantom's mouth as he glances back up at Superman. "A bit ironic that the only survivor was a girl, huh?" he asks wryly. Clark isn't sure he's meant to respond, but the ghost just eats the fry and glances at the street view from the window before he starts again. "To this day, I still have no clue where he got my DNA samples. I was so paranoid about leaving my ectoplasm at fights after all," he admits with a humorless laugh. "For a little while, I was scared of eating out, too. I'd take home any of my used straws to burn." He turns back to the table and pointedly drinks at his soda, as if the admission of the concern is not something Superman had not even considered and needs to keep in mind. He is cut off from his mental planning by Phantom stating, "Course, then I realized the Fruit Loop had free access to my house, so all of those public precautions didn't mean much." The teen's face was distant and blank as he stares at the soft drink. "Phantom?" Clark asks in concern. The ghost blinks back to the present, rubbing the back of his neck. "So, anyways, to answer your question, yes, I do feel violated. This whole experience is actually bringing up some pretty bad memories, you know?" He did not know. Clark didn't even know about this being a ghost's second experience with cloning. Who in the world clones a 14-year-old dead kid? And was he even dead at the time? He can't decide which way is worse. "I'm sorry," Superman apologizes. "I didn't realize. You just seemed so happy, and I thought..." "Want to know something, Clark?" Superman straightens in his seat. Phantom never uses his real name, despite knowing his civilian ID for a while now. "When they told me I was cloned again," he begins, despite Clark's lack of an answer, "I was terrified." Clark doesn't remember that. Then again, he was a bit busy with his own internal panic to really pay attention to Phantom's reaction. From what he's seen and heard, though, Phantom took to the baby immediately. "I was so careful. I tried so hard to avoid this type of situation. Even if I failed with my godfather, I knew that there were other wackos out there who would try something similar." Phantom fidgets with the hem of his glove, avoiding Clark's gaze. "I'll be honest, I probably got a bit too relaxed over the years. Must have let my guard down enough for someone to steal some samples. But even if they got some DNA..." He looks up and whispers in a frantic tone, "I never thought they would succeed." I mean, apparently I'm surprisingly difficult to clone. The only reason my godfather got as far as he did was because he studied ghosts so much. Phantom wrinkles his nose at some unseen memory. "So when they told me I had a clone, a new one, I didn't know what to think." "And then I saw him," Phantom says quietly, eyes softening. "And I knew I couldn't just leave him." Clark shifts uncomfortably, and the ghost is quick to notice. "Calm down, Supes. I understand why you ran." Phantom says, slightly loosening the knot of dread in his chest. When I first met my little sister, I was a bit too busy fighting for my life to really process the whole clone fact. Afterwards, she just left. The ghost makes a small gesture to the sky and says, flew off into the sunset to travel the world. Superman is not too sure what to address there. He realizes Phantom would have just been a kid at the time, an actual kid, but even so, letting an unknown wander off who knows where sounds like a terrible idea. She was only 12 at the time, the ghost continues, and lets out a sharp bark of bitter laughter. Not even that, chronologically. She was only a few months old when she decided to go off on her own, and I did nothing to stop her. The teen glares at his meal. I didn't offer any alternatives or options. Hell, I didn't even give her the stranger danger talk. I used the excuse that it was her choice to leave, but in reality, I was just scared. Scared of taking her in, of the responsibility, of the consequences. The ghost makes eye contact with Superman as he says, I may not have directly rejected her, but I left her alone, all the same. Then, at the Cadmus Labs, they handed me the baby, and I knew I couldn't leave him on his own. I couldn't do that again. Clark sits in stunned silence as Phantom gets up, not even bothering to float, and clasps him on the shoulder. I'll take care of Connor for as long as he needs, the ghost says, but you need to make it clear whether you want to be a part of his life or not. I won't tell you what choice to make. Just don't take your resentment out on the kid. He picks up his drink, taking off the lid to chug the rest. The hero takes his empty, but didn't even finish the food, tray, and walks away muttering about stupid billionaire Fruit Loops under his breath. The conversation has given the man a lot to consider, but the reporter in Clark keeps nagging at him. Why is a ghost eating food in the first place? Where's the first clone now? And, most importantly, if cloning technology already existed when he was 14, then how old is Phantom? Notes. Danny. He must really care about their safety. Clark. You just let them go? No countermeasures? Backup plans? Danny, laughing. Such a helicopter parent. Ellie is working hard on earning the title of favorite aunt. This concludes the reading of Superman's Confrontation by Vet2270. I love this fic. So I think I've made it very clear in the past few episodes. Don't mind me shifting in my chair. I don't like Superman. I get where he's coming from. Absolutely. If I found out I was cloned, I would just be like, oh shit. What the fuck? I completely understand where Superman is coming from. My issue is not with that choice of his that he made. My issue with the choice is that he's taking out his resentment on the situation out on Connor. And I feel like Phantom did a fantastic job at emphasizing that for himself, because Phantom wasn't afraid of Ellie. He was afraid of what had happened and what was going on. And I feel like Superman is unintentionally taking out his frustration and fear on Connor, and I hate that. It's something I hate in pretty much all media, when there's a character who is angry and takes it out on other people when that's not truly the reason why he's doing the things that he's doing. If you can see a certain character in that description, I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, but seriously, I love this, because I feel like this goes for a lot of things. Not to get all like deep, but I feel like this situation can be very easily interpreted as like, I hate to say this, but like rape. Let's hope YouTube doesn't get mad at me for saying that, but we're gonna find out. But it can be very easily interpreted as that, and everything Superman is feeling is very valid, and it's okay to feel that way. But what Danny's saying is also very true. Connor and the child did nothing to do with anything that happened. It wasn't their fault, and you shouldn't take out your anger about the situation on that child. If you can't take care of that child for... My mother is coughing. If you can't take care of that child because of your issues with the event that made them come into existence in the first place, that's okay. But at the very least, you need to take responsibility enough to make sure that child has what they need. And I think it's very important, and it's something that we don't often discuss. And I think personally, this would have been like so great to have in the show. I think it would have been like a really deep conversation to have on the show. And granted, it's a kid's cartoon. I doubt that they're ever going to talk about it. But like, the entire team confronted the idea of death and sacrificing themselves. So why the frickety frack would they not talk about something like this? I feel like this is such like, this could be so subtexty that most people it would just go over their head. But for those that needed it, it could have been so great. And I love that this fic in particular does do that. It talks about the issues and the consequences of your actions and all of this, and it lays out that, hey, stuff is going to happen, and it's your job to deal with the consequences of that. Now, you can take them on yourself, or you can have somebody else take care of them, but ultimately you have to do something, and you should never, ever, 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 ever take out your frustrations or your fear against somebody who had nothing to do with the event that spawned them into being in the first place. So yeah, sorry about that little rant. I feel very passionately about this subject. I think I've made that pretty clear in my past videos. But yeah, so anyway, please do share your thoughts on this golden piece, and don't forget to reach out to the original author, as always, linked in the description. In addition, let me know if you have any recommendations. I'm always looking to add to my horde. I do actually have quite a few fics on the back burner waiting to be read, so I think I need to get through a few of those, but I am very interested to hear all of your recommendations, especially because some of them are like really good and I want to read them before I read others. So if I am putting one of your recommendations off on the back burner a little bit and you notice, I promise it has nothing to do with you. It just has to do mostly with what I think I can record in a timely manner. And also, if I've read it before, I'm more likely to want to podfic it just because I already know how that story is going to go down and whether or not I can do it justice. So just keep that in mind when you guys are sending me recommendations. And if you do get upset that I don't do your recommendation like as soon as I can, it's just there are many factors that go into which fic I decide to podfic. So keep that in mind. Anyway, not that any of you have complained about that to my knowledge, but I feel the need to mention it. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening to this Dragon's Horde.